hope, and love these last few weeks. And tonight we're going to intro with hope. My name is Ellis, campus director here at the University of North Florida. Faith, hope, and love, as we walk through this kind of start to our series of how do we endure or how do we persevere. It's interesting because faith, hope, and love are the ones that we know that verse. We're like, faith, hope, and love. Yeah, that makes sense. And then we talk only about two of them. Hope is like the red-headed stepchild that no one talks about. We all just assume, hope, we get it, right? Hope. But we'll really dig into what is faith. But faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Interesting. And then we really want to learn how to apply love, right? And we talk about I really struggle with love, and we focus on God's love. But we can't love unless we have a greater hope than what we have right now. Because just hoping. But to hope that I can love people out of the goodness of who I am isn't enough. So hope has to be something bigger. It has to be more focused on. We have to think through what it is, because I think we live in a generation and a culture that Job would continue to agree with, is once we lose hope, things begin to fall apart. So as the video said, hope isn't optimism. I'll often say, I hope the Jags win this week, right? Duval, right? Come on. Duval. No matter what stadium they're playing in, you could just hear that one guy in the back. Just, Duval. It's so epic. I love it. Perfect. Or kind of that attitude, the sun will come out tomorrow. The sun will come out tomorrow. There's just this, that's like wishing, right? That's like a psychological hope or wishing that something will happen. I always have to convince myself. Even there's a motive psychology right now that talks about you just have to make things happen. If you think positively toward those things, then you'll become more responsible if you think about responsibility. Optimism or psychology won't change the world. It's not big enough. It's not powerful enough. Hope is a choice and a belief. It's got to be big. It's got to be strong. It's got to be steadfast. It's bigger than our feelings and our circumstance. Interesting thing about hope, Saddleback Church, one of the largest churches in the U.S., is partnered with Barna to study about hope. As head pastor, his son had just committed suicide, and he really felt the Lord lead him into this series of hope. And they made an interesting study. They looked up the 10 most common reasons for hopelessness. A lack of hope, right? I just wanted to read them off and just see how many of them you can kind of connect with. Fair? And then if we connect to some of them, maybe we'll talk about why we need hope. Number 1, I feel alone. I can be in a crowd, yet I still feel alone. I can be surrounded by people. I can be known online, but I still feel alone. Number 2, life seems out of control. I feel overwhelmed. I can't handle all of it. There's too much. Life seems out of control. I don't see a purpose. I don't see a purpose. There's got to be something more. Number 4, grieving a loss. It could be loss of a person. It could be loss of an opportunity. It could be loss of a loved one. Grieving a loss. I don't have what I need. And this could be skills. This could be financially. This could be in the resource or connection. I feel behind is often a pressure there. I don't have what I need. I've done something wrong. This connotates with shame or this feeling of regret, I wish it would have gone different. Or even maybe a bitterness to someone or a guilt that I've messed up. I've done something wrong. Number 7. I've been deeply wounded by someone. I've been deeply wounded by someone. Now, this could be a real abuse. This could be a betrayal of a friendship or something said. could be a deep bitterness of someone who just continues a pattern of lacking to love you. But I've been deeply wounded by someone. I feel pulled in directions. This is the idea of like a temptation or something I know that isn't healthy, or a drug addiction, or a feeling, things that just pull me the directions that I don't want to go. But I feel pulled in directions. Number 9, I feel hounded by fear. Like it's chasing me down. Like it just keeps coming. Like it's all around me. And the last one, number 10, when it looks like defeat. Like as if I'm in a last stand. And this is the only hope. I got one more shot. Why even try? I feel a lot of those pretty often. Why don't you just take a second and maybe write down one of the ones that, or maybe circle one of the ones if you're taking notes, that you felt really, man, I feel that one, you know? So, these aren't small things that we're going to talk about. These are the 10 things that lead to hopelessness, right? The solution to them has to be hopefulness, right? Like, I have to be filled with hope. That's what fullness means. I'm filled with it. I'm brimming with it. If I'm going to feel connected and not isolated, I'll need hope. If life seems out of control, I'll need a hope bigger and stronger and more steadfast. If I don't see why I'm on this earth and I don't get why I'm here, I need a hope that's bigger than my lostness. If I've lost someone in our community, I can feel this. I need to believe there's something bigger. I need a hope. If I don't have what I need, it's got to be bigger than financials. There's got to be something there. If I've done something wrong, I gotta hope there's something bigger than my mistakes, because I've made a lot of them. And if I've been hurt by someone, man, I better believe there's something more powerful than this pain. Because this pain, I feel it a lot. And when I'm pulled in the direction of sin, I can feel the tension. I do not do the things I want to do, but I do the things I don't want to do. And it just feels like a mess, and that I'm out of control. And if it's me in control, we're steering this thing right off the cliff, right? I need something to hope in that's bigger than me. If I'm hounded by fear, I'm scared of a lot of things, and they often feel bigger than anything else. But I got to find something and believe in something stronger than those things I'm scared of. And when it looks like defeat, I better have something that's going to be victorious. Or why even believe it? So today we're going to talk about some of these hopes. And we need something big and steadfast. And as I was thinking about, man, what connotates hope? What is something that we can believe in and big? I thought of an anchor. An anchor. Took this the other day at Mayport. I didn't really do that. But it's amazing that this metal piece can hold that entire ship in place, right? That's amazing. But it doesn't hold it like set in place like it can't move, right? An anchor is meant to put down, and so that regardless of what's going on around the ship, you'll stay pretty much where you need to be. Because the tendency of a ship is to kind of drift. And it might even drift into dangerous waters or to places they don't want to go. So they have to lay anchor. And an anchor has to be heavy and strong. And this idea of these 2 hooks that come out of it, it's so that when they drop the anchor, it'll barrel into the bottom of the ocean and hook on. So it won't move the ship. It'll be a steadfast anchor. We need something big like this to hold us down. Because all these 10 things, they're pretty scary and pretty big. And I think what's amazing is the bigger the ship, the bigger the anchor, right? I saw a picture of the chains. You see these like little chains around here? Those are probably like this big. For an oil tanker, it's from me to her. That's what one of those little like round chains is like. It's from me to her. It makes me look tiny. So, if you want a big life, this abundant life Christ offers you, you're going to need a big anchor. If you want a little life that doesn't have any value Or does it have any impact, then you don't need a big anchor. You can have a little anchor. But if you want to believe that you guys can change the world, and you have an impact, and your life will matter, and it will go into the nations, then we'll need a big anchor. So let's pray, and let's ask God, and would you give us this? God, thank you so much for these friends. Thank you that in spite of these things, God, in spite of our fears and our failures and all the things swirling around us, you offer us this anchor, an anchor for our souls, God. Would you help us to put our hope in that anchor? Because Christ, without that, we're drifting into waters we don't want to go. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So you can open up to Hebrews chapter 6. That's where we'll spend the majority of our time. So Hebrews chapter 6. General Electric Power Company, then the T sections, then you get to Hebrews. So chapter 6. Chapter 6. Verses 13 through 19. So Hebrews is great. We don't really know the author, but he's taking the whole Old Testament and showing that Jesus is better, right? So sometimes when we don't really know the Old Testament, we don't really understand Hebrews, but I think we can walk through this together because we're going to run into an old friend along the way. So let me read it for us. Hebrews 6. For when God made a promise to Abraham, since he had no one greater by whom to swear, he swore by himself, saying, surely I will bless you and multiply you. And thus Abraham, having patiently waited and obtained the promise. For people swear by something greater than themselves. In all their disputes, an oath is a final for confirmation. So when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise the unchangeable character of his purpose, he guaranteed it with an oath, so that by two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled for refuge might have some strong encouragement to hold fast to hope the hope to set before us. We have this, a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain. So this is an amazing passage filled with illusion and promises fulfilled from the Old Testament. So Abraham, we read parts of this. We read the fast forward version in chapter 15 when we started Navna. That God is coming to him and saying, I'm going to bless you and make you a blessing to the nations. I'm going to multiply your life. And then we jump to chapter 15, which is him continuing the promise that Abraham wasn't believing. And then God says, I'll make you more numerous than the stars, remember? Remember that starry night? I'll make you more numerous than the stars. And then the amazing thing happens at the end of that. That God says, I'm going to confirm this promise. And so we're just kind of getting this perspective from Abraham for the story. That this pillar of fire moves in between this animal that was slain. And you might wonder, that's like a weird chapter in the Bible. I don't know what that means. It's because we're not ancient people, right? This is a symbol of a covenant that God is making in the Old Testament. But the thing is, it's not with Abraham. It's in front of Abraham. See, we think there's a part. He does give him part of the promise. But God is making right there a covenant with himself. And you wonder why we have a bride side and a groom side in a wedding? It's because when they rip the animal in half, it's like, if I don't fulfill this promise, rip us in half. If this marriage isn't fulfilled, rip us in half, like these families are ripped in half. That's the symbolism of marriage. You didn't know that's why they walk down the middle. So God is saying in his presence, if I can't fulfill my promise I'm making to myself, rip me in half. But God can't lie, right? So the amazing thing is that I love that it's so he decided to swear to a higher power. But he couldn't do that, so he swore to himself, right? It's amazing. And even non-Christians, they stub their toe, and they're like, damn it, oh man. They're like, oh no. And they use the Lord's name in vain, right? Like some non-believers use Jesus' name more than we do. And you're like, how is that possible? Because even deep down, they know that's a higher power than themselves. So in their frustration, they're calling upon something more powerful than themselves. And you're like, they don't even catch that. I know, it's amazing. So when we're trying to swear something, we swear by a higher power. But God couldn't go higher than himself, like top level, right? So there's something amazing about this promise, and there's three things that create this anchor. And this anchor, it's so beautiful. He secures it in the most beautiful spot. In the Old Testament, they built this temple, and it had 3 stages, and everyone could come into the first, and only the chosen people into the second. And then there was this third spot that only one person entered once a year. It was called the Holy of Holies. It had this deep red black cloth, and it was so strong, and light couldn't even get through it. And if you walked in there, they tied like a little bell to your foot. So if you sinned that year, it would just strike you dead, and they would just pull your corpse out. It's pretty intense, right? Because God's holiness is that serious. And so Jesus comes and rips it in half. It's amazing, and he's saying, come on into the Holy of Holies. Because our hope now dwells in the Holy of Holies. So now once you could never enter because you were unclean, Jesus is saying, I'm putting you secure in there. It's amazing. This promise is filled with things, right? But I want to show you the real anchor now that we have. Okay? So we see 3 aspects to this anchor. Okay? First is the unchangeable nature of God. Right? He even says that. The unchangeable character of his purpose. The unchangeable character of God. And we're going to go to each of these, so I'm just going to give you the overarching right now. And then we got the oath. So you see that. So he decided, he guaranteed it with an oath. Right? And then we have his promises. His promises. Okay? Man, this is a big anchor. And it's worth us grasping hold of. Because it's secure. And it's strong. So we start with the unchangeable character or nature of God. So God says right there, he swears by himself. Why? Because God can't lie. Numbers, oh, it's so good. God is not like man, that he should change his mind. Or the Son of Man, that he should he not promise then fulfill? Right? He's like, am I going to change what I say? I'm going to say one thing and do another? We have this lie sometimes right now that the Old Testament is different God than the New Testament. Man, if that's true, your theology is terrifying. You're basically saying that God tomorrow, if we go up into the clouds, he could just suddenly get angry. If that's true, we serve a terrifying God. He has to be the same God in the Old and the New Testament. Because if not, he's terrifying. Look, even the reaffirms it just a few chapters later in Hebrews 13:8, right? He says, Jesus is the same today. Have memorized it already. Sorry. Same yesterday, today, and forever. So he reaffirms it in Hebrews 13:8. And so we have to put our hope in something that is not changing. And see, sometimes we put our hope in things that change, like our relationship status. And the problem is that's not secure, right? At any moment, your boyfriend or girlfriend could say, I don't like you anymore. Go away. Or they could say, I like him a lot better than you. You laugh, but have none of you felt that betrayal? Our God would never do that to you. He's never going to look and say, wow, I found a better one than Olivia. On to the next thing. He's not going to upgrade to the next model. Our relationship status isn't secure. Sometimes we think of if I could just look good and I could have it all together. And we have this idea, if I could just look good, maybe my image, maybe it's my waistline, maybe it's the way my hair sits. Oh yeah, guys, you think pornography is pretty bad? Ladies, I know body image is just as hard for you guys. The other day I heard a stat. 95% of women by age 8 will have tried a diet plan. Man, don't think we struggle with that, huh? It's a deep struggle with us. But beauty's this dart it's just moving around, right? It's like, this is pretty, this is pretty, this is pretty. Oh, we just digitally touch this up, and that's why it's pretty. Man, we can't feel secure in these things, right? It can't be these moving objects that just keep going different directions. It's insanity. We're just chasing after something we're never going to find. And you can see it so easily that it has to be a choice in something greater in Lamentations 3. So Lamentations 3 is in the midst of Jeremiah has finished his prophesying. And so God just told Jeremiah, man, this guy's job is rough. Just so you guys know, you think ministry's hard, Jeremiah's was rougher, okay? So Jeremiah gets told by God, hey, you're going to talk to people and they're not going to listen at all. What an encouraging ministry to be called to. And so Lamentations literally means how. Like, how could this have happened? And so literally all the ministry and all the people that Jeremiah has been working with, it's all falling apart around him, right? The city is literally getting burned to the ground. People are literally being taken out of their homes into the streets and just being pulled away. And, we get like the pretty version of the Bible, and he's just like, I just destroyed them. The Assyrians are brutal. They're ripping people in half in the streets, gouging out their eyes, ripping out tongues. It's crazy. So, Jeremiah writes Lamentations in the middle of that. What a great poet to meet him in his life. So he starts. So he spent the entire first 3 chapters just explaining what is actually happening around them. That though we started hoping in things, God has now ripped those things out of Israel's hand and has now put them reliant on him alone again. And this is how he responds in the middle of all that pain. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is whose faithfulness? Your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. God has to be bigger than our circumstances. His nature is the thing we must rest our hope in, because it's the only thing that is never changing. Everything else in this universe will actually change. Right? We're going to get to that in a little bit. He's going to renew everything. But he won't. And it's in the midst of all this tumultuousness, in this fear, in this pain, in this mourning, all those things. Think how alone Jeremiah felt if no one listened to him, right? But this I recall to mind, and therefore have hope. And this is interesting to me because hope has to be bigger than our feelings and our circumstances. If hope is reliant on your feelings, it's going to dissolve right in front of you. He says, put my hope in God. Look, I love it. Look, isn't it so interesting? He says my soul, therefore, and I hope in him. Often when I'm feeling like defeated or like I can't do it or overwhelmed, you know what I do? I try and run to other things. I escape the problem, right? If I was Jeremiah, I want to run and go preach somewhere else. There's more lost people everywhere, right? So let's run to something else. In college for me, that was running to pornography all the time. I felt stressed. I felt like I wanted to get rid of this anxieties and all these things. I would run to this thing to would this just make me feel better? So we can try and take our feelings and frustrations and run to things. Sometimes we just want to turn our brains off to not think about problems, right? So we just scroll, right? And scroll, and scroll, and scroll. And there's just thousands of people crying out in pain, and we don't even worry about it, right? Ooh, like that one, It just happens like that. Or we just, I can't sit and watch an hour of a movie, but I can watch 5 episodes of this thing, right? Like, we can just binge on these things, right? Even that idea of binging, right? It's so interesting, that's the word we've used. Binging is the idea of, I do this to get away from something else. Sometimes we might just ignore it. Man, I'm having lots of problems. I'm just going to ignore my problems. Maybe I'll come back to this and it's just fixed, right? Maybe it'll take care of itself. I won't call her, I won't text him, because then maybe they'll be happy with me. I just ignore the problem. Some of you thought, I'm just going to take myself out of the equation. If I could just take my own life, then I have no more problems. And that's not a joke. Those are serious things. All of these are symptoms of us lacking any hope. It's when we get to the point where we don't feel like we can keep going. That's the part where we need hope the most. And it's not a small deal if you've had those thoughts. It's not something to be laughed or ignored. It's a place where God can bring hope in a hopeless situation. But with hope, we have to choose it. It won't be a feeling, because it will feel like everything is falling apart. Because honestly, the world is falling apart. These feelings, these fears, this desire to escape is a symptom of a lack of hope. That we need something more secure to put our hope in. And that has to be the unchangeable character of God. It's one piece of our hope. The next piece is an oath. And so, for some of you who don't know what an oath is, I'm going to give you Merriam-Webster's definition, so theologically sound. A solemn promise, often invoking a divine witness, regarding one's future action or behavior. A promise, a pledge, an affirmation, a sworn declaration that one will tell the truth, especially in a court of law. Now, we said this earlier out of Hebrews 6 that God had to make an oath against himself, right? And you might be thinking, well, what's the difference between an oath and a promise, Alex? Our promises are going to be to us. That's the difference. The oath is to himself. Because he's doing it to a divine witness, right? Who is the witness? Now let's just think on that for a while. But the thing about this oath is it's his promise to himself that he will redeem all things to himself. Remember, time is just like a little detail to him. He's not attached to time. He's not like stuck with us now like, man, I hope they're going to figure this out. Like, he's right now with us, but he's also right now parting the Red Sea. But he's also right there where heaven is meeting earth right now. Because he's outside of time and it's not a thing to him. So he's making this promise to himself that he's going to fulfill because he's already seen it happen. It's not like God is like a watchmaker setting things up and just hoping they run until it gets to his plan. He's there, right? He's not like time machining it back and forth each time. He's already there. And so what do we need to believe this oath? To see this oath? Because this is a promise. It's not a promise. This is a fact, basically. That's what God is trying to say. That the world is done. And I will recreate everything. I will redo the garden. I will make a new heaven and a new earth where there's no weeping, no pain, no tears, no more loss, no more hurt, no more unclean things. And that's his declaration. But to believe this, we need bifocal vision. Okay? Often we don't really think this is credible, or we think we don't really need this. But there's two parts to this. Bifocals are meant to help you see, right? So we need them. And so one part of the lens is to look back. So we need to be able to look back on the faithfulness of God. Not that he's going to we need him to prove himself. We just need to see that he has been proven, right? It's interesting, at the end of Joshua's looking back and he says, oh my gosh, not one good word of all the promises the Lord had made to Israel had failed. They all came to pass. It's like it struck him that God was just faithful to what he said. And we need to do that. Think about this, that God says, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. Because he's not the God of the dead, he's the God of the living, right? He says that in the New Testament. But have you thought about that? What is he trying to say? He's trying to say, remember when I was faithful to Abraham? I'll be more faithful. I'll be the same faithfulness to you. Like, remember Moses? He parted the Red Sea. You'll do greater works than these. Like, I am still there with you. And so often, we can feel hurt by other people, right? We talk about that wounded, that people betray us or say nasty things about us, or give us this passive-aggressive attitude, and you just want to pop them in the head or something, you know? You know, all these people in the past in the Old Testament, they were hurt by people all the time. That's why the Old Testament is a hot mess. Because life is a hot mess. And God's wanting to show that regardless of how messy or how cruel other people can be, his oath will still happen. And his faithfulness endures forever. because great is his faithfulness. Or we want to compare to other people. We're like, well, like, where's Bree at in this? Or where I'm at in this? Or where's them at in this? Or how are we doing here? Or like, man, this church is having this, or we're doing this, or this club's doing this. Man, it's really interesting to think when Israel started comparing against the other nations, what is going on? The God of the universe is redeeming all things through you, and you want a little bit of gold? That's what you want? You want chariots and horses? That's what you're jealous of? He's like, I'm going to use you to touch all nations. Out of you will come to Christ. And it's interesting that Lamentations, before he gets to 3:23, he's ripping away all those pieces out of him, right? He's like, you wanted the chariots? I gave them to you, and you still didn't praise me. I'll take them back. You wanted the land? I gave it to you, and you still didn't praise me. I'll take it back. Now, the beauty is our anchor is secure, right? He's not taking away our hope anymore. But it's interesting to watch how we can compare and feel hurt by others because we lose sight that God is still faithful, right? If God's still faithful, it's okay that I feel hurt by my sister ignoring me, or saying mean things about me. It's like, well, it's okay because, my anchor is secure. That person's words, they're just a fading mist. Won't even be here tomorrow. You know what? Facebook won't be in the new heaven and the new earth. But I can let those things weigh heavier on me than I can let the scriptures empower me. So one part is looking back to the Old Testament and seeing how God has been faithful. I mean, technically you look at all the scriptures and see how he's faithful, because the New Testament's not happening right now, if you didn't notice that. But now, so we look back to the scriptures to see God's faithfulness. And then the other part is looking forward to his promised conclusion. We get the end of the script, right? We always joke about that, like the book of Revelation, by the way. There's only one Revelation. Just want to help you guys out. The book of Revelation is so powerful because you know what? Heaven, it's a small deal, small potatoes. God's doing something even bigger than that. He's going to recreate all creation, and he'll replace the sun. It's craziness. So excited. Can't wait to see how it all pans out, right? It'll be fun. Teach on that, study on your own. But the interesting thing about having the ending is we know that's secure, right? That, like, right now, I might feel really in pain when I can't get that thing that I want to happen, or when I miss that opportunity, or when that person doesn't agree with me. But guess what? In the new heaven and earth, there's no weeping, there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no more cancer, there's no more death, and there's nothing unclean in his presence. Which is great news, because that means you have to have been clean from all those mistakes that you've made, and I've made. So that has to be the hope. And you know what's great about that? Then all the things that we want to put our hope in here, they're just small, right? It's like, do I want to put my hope in some big white house that's 1,000 miles away? Nope. I have a hope bigger than that, right? I don't care who sits there. Do I want to put my hope in this project or this thing? No, because my hope, all things will be renewed, right? We have to have this bifocal vision, because when we lose sight that God is going to redeem all things, then this world is our only hope, right? And if we forget his faithfulness, then when circumstances come up and we don't know how to handle them, we'll run in terror. So we have to look at the oath. His unchanging nature and the oath are the two starts to holding down this anchor. Now become one of my favorite parts, the promises. Now the oath was to himself, right? Now the promises are to us. He gave a promise that was never failing. This book is filled with over 7,000 promises. Okay? Think he wanted us to feel sure of them? Do you have one you're praying? Like, really? And you thought that list of 10 things was really hard, then find a promise to be praying. And you don't have to get creative and find your own. Just Google it, whatever. And it's got all the answers, right? So, look it up. Ask your friends, what are things you're praying? What are things you're hoping in? I like Luke 18:1. It's really interesting, right? We start here. It says, and he told them a parable to the effect that there ought always to pray and not lose heart, right? So this is his intro into one of his sermons, right? So he's introing one of his sermons, and he's going to tell a parable, okay? But before he tells the parable, he's saying, this is the whole chapter in Luke where he's going to talk about prayer. He's saying, you ought to pray. Why? So that you not lose heart. Other translations, so you don't lose hope. Which is really interesting, because that's what we're talking about, right? So what do we do with the promises? We pray the promises. We say, God, you said that you would never leave me nor forsake me. God, I feel very forsaken, and I feel very alone. You know, that's hard. Because we have to believe these promises. We have to put our hope in them. Just like he's saying, we have to put our hope in them. Even though my feelings are saying that's not true. You see David wrestle with this all the time in the Psalms, right? He talked about 42 times of waiting. He says, put your hope in God. David literally says that to himself in Psalm 42. And the beautiful thing about prayer and praying the promises, and there's so many of them, I wish we could do a whole night of promises because they're amazing, is that this is the beautiful thing about prayer. Look at Hebrews 4, 15 and 16. You know what's amazing? Is that I'm not just praying to the guy in charge. Simply. There's so much more than that. And I don't have to pray to just someone who's got a cool collar on. My prayers in Hebrews 4, 15 and 16 say this. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. What's the great news there? Is that Jesus knows and can sympathize with you. He's not like, oh, your tests are hard? Foolish child. But really though, he sympathizes. He's like, it is hard. I'm sorry to hear that. You know when you're talking to someone and they're just like giving you the solution to your problem, even though you just want them to just listen to you? Ladies understand, gentlemen, you're like, what? Jesus never is just trying to fix the problem. He's already fixed the problem. So he wants to sympathize and know our weaknesses. That's why he took on full flesh, so that he wasn't far off and distant. Okay? And then, what's the amazing truth is we can now draw with confidence to the throne of grace. That when we come with the promises, the check is already cleared. We can come and say, you said this, Lord. I want you to fulfill it. That's why when we pray on this campus, I say pray the promises of God. Because Isaiah 60:22 is a promise we've claimed for years. That the least shall become 1,000, the smallest a mighty nation. And I am the Lord, and in its time I'll hasten it. That this least one campus God will use to touch the nations. So we have to put our hope in God. We have to actually do that. Because thinking and feeling doesn't make it true. It's not the hope. Not the sun will come out tomorrow, right? We have to choose to put our hope in something bigger and something strong and steadfast, like the promises of God. I like one thing I've learned as an exercise in psychology, just for you guys to have. But as a good exercise, is to challenge my own thoughts. Sometimes I have these things that come up and say, you're not enough. You're right, there is no point. Just because I have a thought doesn't mean it's right. Just because I have a feeling doesn't mean it's in control. Jeremiah says the heart is deceitful above all things. Now you get a new heart, you get a new heart when you come to Christ, right? Freshmen, 2 Corinthians 5:17. You know what I'm saying? Old's gone, new's come, right? So we have this steadfast anchor that holds us in, right? We have to put our hope in it. We have to actually drop it in and say it's going to be enough, in spite of the circumstance and in spite of our feelings. Now you can ask yourself really easily and say, well, if I'm just hoping to a future that's already for sure, and I know God's already going to be faithful, then I can just check out, right? Like I just need to kind of ride the ship and enjoy, right? God's going to take care of us. We got this. I need to not worry about these things. I think it's really interesting as Paul wrestles with how he deals with this greater hope he has. So let's go to Philippians 1:18. Philippians 1:18. Okay? It's 1:18b. I'm not starting to know the verses. The verses aren't divinely inspired. See? They're just in there. So, 18b. Yes, and I will rejoice, for I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. As it is my eager expectation and you guys are catching on now. That I will not be ashamed at all. That I will not be at all ashamed. But that with full courage, now as always, Christ will be honored in my body, whether by life or by death. Now I'm going to pause this here. Now we're getting to like the verses we have like just locked and loaded, right? Tim Tebow taught us this verse. So we know it. We're not going there yet, okay? I think it's interesting because he's setting the tone, right? Yes. He's answering their questions and the problems they're having. He's saying, yes, but really I have a hope that dwells secure and that I know I'll never feel shame ever again because God's already taken care of it. And I have a hope that's bigger and secure. And now he has a what? Eager expectation or a confidence or an assurance. You can use any of those words and they'd be fine. And now, because of that, he can respond with full courage. And how is he going to respond? This is really interesting, right? And now comes our Tim Tebow verse we all know. For to me is to live as Christ and to die as gain. That's like the Christian hold my beard, right? Here I go. But it's so much bigger than that. And I want you to see why it's bigger than that. Because he's saying death, life, it doesn't matter because I know where my hope is, right? And this is how he responds. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, yet which I shall choose, I cannot tell. He doesn't know what's going to happen, right? That's what he's saying. I am hard-pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh, that means his body, is more necessary on your account. Talking to the Philippians. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ in Jesus because of my coming to you again. So this is so cool because he's saying, I have this hope, it's secure, whether life, whether death, doesn't matter, let's go. I know what's happening, right? He has that bifocal vision. God was faithful to them, he'll be faithful to me. I know where I'm going. I know the promises God has for me. I know that God's not going to change tomorrow. So because he has that secure anchor, what can he say? Well, his desire, of course, just like mine, is to go meet God face to face, right? That's what my eager desire is. But this is so cool, guys. Check this out. My desire is to depart. That word right there, that depart, you can write this down. It's so good. In the Greek, where it would translate from, that is a nautical depart. Okay? It's literally from the Navy. And what is it meaning? The depart would be translated to take up anchor and go home. The battle is finished. I'm going home. My desire is to take up anchor and go home, right? Because then we don't need hope anymore. Heaven meets earth. We see him face to face. I don't even hope that it's going to happen. It actually did happen. It's so amazing. Because I would rather depart and see it happen, but instead I'm choosing to stay here and labor amongst you. Because my hope, I want it to be your hope. It's so amazing. He's choosing. We will choose. You know, you're like, why does it matter that I go be a nurse if God's going to just destroy all things and renew them, right? Because people matter to God. And their hope matters tremendously to God. It's huge. Your life isn't purposeless. It's not that it doesn't matter. It's that it's so much bigger and it so much matters. That he would rather keep you here than take you back home. I mean, think of the idea of a sailor returning from war. Isn't he longing to go home? To be with his wife and family and kids? Yeah, I long to be home. If you ever feel like, man, this is just long and hard, right? That is life, right? The battle isn't finished. We are at war against all things. These principalities and everything. Yeah, so we labor because we're here because we have a calling here that matters more than just making it through. Your goal wasn't to just punch the ticket and make sure you got upstairs. There's bigger things than that for God for you. Now, it's easy to think okay, well, I figured this out. If I can just theologically understand these things, I will put my hope in God like he told me to do, and it will all work out, right? And I can labor on the side, and I can continue the mission to know Christ and to make him known and help others do the same. But here is the problem. You can't do it alone. To have a hope that's bigger and more secure, you'll need others to help you not lose heart. Check out Hebrews 10:24 and 25. I think one of the sharpest of the early APAC of the TMS. So Hebrews 10:24 and 25. One of the most probably ignored commandments here. So Hebrews 10:24 and 25. And let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works, not neglecting meeting together as some is in the habit of, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as I see the day drawing near. See, look, where's his focus? The day drawing near, right? What's that day? New heaven and new earth, right? Oh man, he's got the focus. But before I get just stuck on that, what do I have to do? I have to consider, actually think about how I can love who's the one another? Everyone in this room. Other people. How can I love other people? And I like how it says, let me just consider how I'm going to stir one another up. I like this idea. It's like that, like stirring the pot, baby. Come on. You know, like stirring the pot. You know what that means? It's not always going to be easy. We talk about like iron sharpening iron. You know what happens when iron sharpens iron? Sparks fly, baby. Guess what? When you're going to be in Bible study sometimes, it's going to be messy. It says, don't give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. It's so easy, like, yeah, I can walk and know God by myself, right? I can spend time in my word, I can read the Bible, I can pray, all these things by myself. That's not what God thinks. I don't know where we got that idea. He said if you don't do it with other people, you'll lose heart, you'll quit. And here comes the real hardest part of this. This verse is so clear, right? Don't give up meeting together. Even when you have an exam, don't give up meeting together, right? Some are in the habit of doing it. But we have to figure out, there's two other parts of this. Don't give up meeting together, how to spur and encourage. That means I'm going to have the courage sometimes to say, hey, you're out of line. You're walking in a different direction. But I'm also going to have the courage to say, you're killing it. You're doing great. I see God's faithfulness in your life. Because we need encouragement and challenge. Now here's my honest truth, and I think this is why I bring this verse into this. It's because for our community and our generation, this is one of the hardest truths for us. Is that we just want to do it on our own. And I hear this communicated so often. It's frustration, it's complaining, it's whatever you want to call it. People will come to me and say, Alex, like, I just don't feel very known or connected. I come to Nabna, I go to a Bible study, but I just don't feel really known or connected. I'm like, man, that's really hard. Like, what's it like? Well, I go to Bible study. You know, like, I sit there. I talk sometimes. You know. The struggle is there's no simple solution. I can't just wave a wand and make you feel connected or know. But it's going to take risk. And the risk is they could hurt you. And that's often why we have those walls up that don't let people in. And then we wonder why they don't know us. The scary thing is we have to let those walls down to feel known. We have to take it and believe that God, even if they destroy my feelings, one, I'm secure because Christ is my identity. And my hope is bigger than them, right? But if we're going to make it through, we need to let some of those walls down and let others in. And that's going to take commitment, which is the fear of our great generation, right? We never want to be committed to anything, even though we subscribe to 19 things, right? So you'll have to take risks. You want me to tell you some of the risks that you're going to have to take? You're going to have to share openly in a Bible study or a small group. You're going to have to do that. And my freshman guys will know this. We struggle with, you know. Whenever you say we in Bible study, it's everybody but me. It's like I'm distancing myself from my struggles, right? Like, yeah, like we all do that, right? Like, yeah, totally, yeah, you, me, yeah, yep. It's like I just want to put my finger out and hope you see me, right? It's not going to work. We have to openly share, I am struggling with this. It's hard for me to get time in the Word, guys. It's hard for me to pray. It's I and me. Start actually using those personal pronouns. You know what it's also going to take? Is confessing sin to one another. Some of you are reading James. The prayer of a righteous man is powerful, right? That's what he says. He commands you to confess sin to one another, right? Got to do it. You think we could just be like, yeah, like God is forgiving you. That's totally true. But sin is going to rule over your life unless you bring it into the light. Another way, if you want to feel known and connected, go to things that help you feel known and connected, right? Like, we don't do just sports on the green just because I like playing spike ball, you know? We're not going camping just because we needed something to do next weekend. I'm totally serious. That is an environment designed for you to help feel known and connected so that you can share the deep wells of your heart with other people. And yeah, it's risky, it's costly. Yeah, relationships will be. If a relationship doesn't cost you anything, then it's not a relationship. And just for any of the doubters or things who are like on the fence maybe, you go, after this every year, I've never been taken up on it. 100% guarantee on your money back. If you feel like you went to camping trip, you tried, you went and like actually talked to people and tried to get connected, and you felt like you got nothing out of it, I just want you to come to me and we'll talk about it. I'll give you your money back. If that's what's holding you back, I don't care. Money? My hope's a new heaven and a new earth. You think $20 hinders my faith? I can go find somebody to give me $20. That's easy. People on the streets getting $20. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Give me that hard. Oh, but I have exams and classes and tests and all these things. Yeah, you sound pretty stressed. Sounds like you need some help around you, huh? We need others or we will lose heart. Our faith has to be secure in something bigger. Our feelings aren't enough. It's dwelt on the unchangeable nature of God, His oath to Himself, and His promises to us. And out of that, we stay here on earth because it is better to depart and go home. But for the people outside of these doors, they're worth it. That's why we're here. Right? If it's just about receiving Christ, then once you punch your ticket, shouldn't you just like pass out and just be swept up into the heavens? But you will lose heart on your own. You will lose heart on your own. Don't give up, but don't neglect the others around you. And I know it's like not awesome to say you need help. No one wants to say I need help. But let's just be real. The gospel means I need help. It's the foundation of the gospel that I couldn't do it on my own. So guess what? If you're in this room, everyone is self-admitting they need help. That's okay. Your secret is out there. Now go connect with other people who need help. You know what I'm saying? How are you going to put your hope in God this week? I want you to write something in. What step? Do I need to go into the scriptures and find His faithfulness? Do I need to connect with people in the openness and bring my sin into the light? Do I need to not just be focused on my tasks? Do I need to actually look and find a promise for myself? How will I put my hope in God? That's a choice. I have to actually do something. How can I do that? How can I put my hope in God? Write something down. Let me pray for us. We'll be done. God, thank you that even when I feel alone, you are not far from me. You are my ever-present help. And you put dozens of people around me. It's not accidental that I'm in this room with all these people. God, when life seems out of control, I can believe that you are in control. When I don't see a purpose, I know that there's a greater purpose, that your great commission is the highest call. When I lose loved ones, when loss feels so costly, I know that there is a place that will never cost me anything again. When I don't have the things I need, Lord, I know that you are my shepherd, and in you I shall not want. When I've done something wrong, I know that I will never have shame anymore, God. God, though others have hurt me and wounded me, you want to bring healing and hope to my soul. Though I'm pulled in so many directions, and I feel like sin is ever before me, and it's pulling me down, I can fix my eyes on you, Jesus, and let those fall away. Though fear ensnares me, God, you're bigger than my fears. When it looks like defeat, I know that you, Jesus, have already sealed the victory. And the tomb is empty as a seal of promise to that, Jesus. And because the tomb is empty and you are no more in death, we celebrate and praise the great and mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Let's stand up and worship the Lord.